It's been now 23 years now, living in New York for 15 years, and been doing that type of thing for 20, 21 years, 22 years now. And street artist, and I decided to call myself WK Interact. And now I just like to be called WK. It's quite short. And quite enjoyed what I do and get a lot of change to get some exposure, and also had the chance to do some stuff from some gallery like Paul, and challenging myself between the street and the artwork you're putting inside is totally different. And it took me quite a long time to achieve that. I think it took me 11, 12 years to finally get something quite good. I think it's slowly becoming interesting. My father was an artist, my mom too, my brother a photographer, so I started to draw when I was 8 years old, so it's kind of like I always have a little bit pen, a brush and something in my pocket and start to go over a lot of stuff from my father. Quite funny to see that. But I've always been drawing so early, so it was natural for me to have the sense of drawing stuff. Three-dimensional color too, and I went in a school, graphic art design school and interior design, and films. I did a lot of film, also work for film industry, working in the fashion industry, a lot of photography, and from there I mixed all that together and I create that kind of pattern, that kind of like three-dimensional sculpture, figurine in motion. I've been living in New York for 15 years. I kind of like adapt myself. I took a lot of idea and a lot of different color, and the street in New York, it's so intense. So most of the stuff as you see here is very, very much from New York. It's totally not like French. And if I was living in a different country, it would probably be a different type of image. So yes, like the color red, blue, yellow, gray, black and white, you know, like a really, really intense color, like caution, yellow, caution, fluorescent, gray, metallic, all that type of stuff. It is representing the situation of New York. The cops, the color blue all the time. The action, the motion, you have 24 hours cab non-stop everywhere. I mean, you basically think the city never sleep. And it's probably unique, you know. That's also what is the stimulation for me to feel the city and interpret it as what I saw it. A lot of kind of like barcode and kind of number, date, I mean car, different. All this is like my neighborhood, like the Chinese neighborhood with all the truck passing, was twisted in my head without the fact that I realized it was going on. So if I was living in France, I would probably did a lot of beauty, sexual couple making love on the street, completely different to something like that. Motion is not about attacking or fear. It's so many things you can create with a human motion, and we're capable to do a lot of stuff. Everyone is having the same possibility, but I always take for granted the beauty of the reality of it. You know, the expression of smiling, laughing, and to be afraid or being suddenly. You know, kind of like the stimulation as you have, but I don't want ignoring. It's only the good parts. I like to you know, the life is 50-50, and I don't like to imagine the life is just all beauty. I think something negative can push something positive. So I don't like the thing, something too clean, too beauty, too perfect. That's why I create stuff with a lot of texture on it, and I don't really paint on canvas, because for me canvas doesn't really match the type of work as I do. So working on wood, I can screw some objects, and suddenly it's become something so heavy, and you see the vein of the wood, something you would not be able to see it in canvas. And also the fact is I'm coming from the street. It's very important to not forget that and almost crop parts of the street and bring it inside a gallery and give him the sense of energy as you could see pieces on the street. And it's very, very difficult. I always have a problem with the limit of my work. You know, the fact is a crop and nothing's happening outside to that frame. I always sense like I should go over. And that's the street. The street I don't frame my work. It's usually the same size to human size, and it's incorporate a doorway, a tunnel, a bridge, somebody jumping onto a building, or a messenger, or a skate guy. But it looks very much more like a motion, but behind the motion, it could be a very political statement. So all this mixing together is. The people doesn't really know that, and I think on something like that, they really see it, my work, on a different edge compared to the street. You know, they're really approaching my work like my whole mind on a little piece. I actually put them like that because they balance well when you look at all of them together. That kind of like series, I did 12 pieces actually. I sold few already, but I decided to put the leftover all together because they worked pretty well. This was best to a story. I wanted to do a short film, and I created that story. It was called The Gang of New York, and I wanted to bring it back where it was the skate below. You know, for me, the skate things, it's nothing about an expensive designer who's supposed to have a skate on top of his bed on his office. You know, the skate for me is more a period of your time when you're more like a teenager and you're fighting with your parents. And having a skate on your room, it's escaping your parents and burn some couple things, you know, breaking things and go with your friend. So I kind of like upgrade it, and I decided to imagine 12 kids. And every kid have his own kind of skate, and they kind of like attaching object, and it becomes like a gang. So it was like a sarcastic of putting weapon. It could be like some kind of weapon made in gel, you know, try to escape your gel. But it looks terrible if is it for adults, and it looks so funny if you see a 12 years old, you know, grabbing the skate and said, "Yeah, that's mine." You know, I'm ready to beat the shit of everyone. So I stopped to make the movie because the movie became very much like a big project, and the parents really want me to sign some contracts. So I decided, okay, that's too much. But I really, really liked this one because the reason of that project, it's still from the street, and it's still about human beings, and it's not anymore a motion, like my type of motion, but it's an object where somebody use it. So the background, it's the skate, and the real fascination things is actually the mind of the kid. So I wanted to go back on his kind of like bedroom with all his own world, with all the ways he was wearing the clothes, and it was like the 360-degree kind of like view of looking at one kid. So it's like representing yourself of what you're wearing, or what type of music is you listening, and I really took me a long time. I had this idea 7-8 years ago, and I did it like in 2006, this 12 skate, and I think I have to do more of that. You know, it's one of my favorite pieces, and I'm glad this piece is in London because the British really understand that type of concept. The British are just kind of like place things on the right way, and they see further to just like looking something and looking at violence elements. You know, if you explain a little bit, they just said, "Oh yeah, I can see that." And in New York, it would be like, you know, it's like weapon, explosion, bomb. It's like terrorists, and this is it. It's one way to go. And in France, the French people have a very difficult way to approach the urban art. They're always a little bit late for that. I think they have a really an enormous retard. I mean, most of the stuff that they have is this beauty city, and everything is about 60 and 100 years ago. And they have some very difficult way to suddenly realize, well, what about now? And German people and Italian and Japanese also, they quite open, but they still see things different. I think the British are the best. This is why I refuse to sell it, and I refuse to do other show in state, and I really wanted to bring them here, because I felt like, first of all, this is so different to the rest of the work, and I really want to see how the people will react it here, and I think I did the right things. The pictures I picked, they're usually on a flea market, and some of the pictures I picked is a real things from jail. Like this guy over there is actually a real picture, a small little picture like that, as I actually reprinted bigger. But all that stuff as you see around, it's his life. That's the main, and I picked a guy who's actually a very soft and very kind of like, he doesn't look like he's a killer, basically. But I wanted to expose his life when he was young over there. We always have a way of behaving a certain way to not doing bad thing and you know, like rape, killing, or strangling, or stealing. And some of all of us, we're capable to do that. And some of the time, you're just born to be a bad boy. And what I did is, like, if you can modulate it yourself, if you can just like stabilize your way of behaving in life and not asking too much, it's quite difficult, because when you drink, you're losing that part. When you're taking drug, you're also a different type of person. But if you see it very carefully, I attach on his own body some kind of extension cord, electricity extension cord, coming to the center of his body. What actually could it be connected to that voltage? And I kind of like puzzling some old pictures. So that is actually his thought when he was a kid with his brother, and this is actually his uncle. And here, that's him in jail because he got cut, because he tried to do his best to not really kind of like, to not be a bad boy, but he's just born like that, and he didn't manage to do it. And this is actually him catching the ball, and that's actually him escaping from the jail. So all this motion, as you see it over there, that's actually the big skull. That's the danger of it, and that's one of his father who getting old and always having eyes on him, because he's always like to play and flirt with women. And it's like a vision. It's like almost like a flip book, an instant flash of you. And the big images you see around like that is actually more like, almost like to stop that. And you almost like you see an accident coming, you saw the whole accident before it happened. So what I wanted to create of that is the texture of it. I also put some different text. You had race whites, him standing like that, the car coming almost like a motion, and all this splash. It looks like everything's happening, and when the people see that work, they just see my image, but they don't really connecting to all this little image. Also, this guy looking that image, so the action coming from there. So the whole piece himself is like a small little pose of the rest of what happened before. So it's almost like I would love to get the emotion coming in and passing through, and it's all this little object, as you see. It's not just there just because I like them. I really like even the piece of wood, and I put them all together. I really wanted to get the fact is not flat anymore, and I broke the piece of wood to create that type of texture, like almost like a boat crashing on a rock. And I mean, I can go on and on and on like this, but it's every time based to could be something is already been past or story, or it could be someone else, or it could be anybody. It's this, even the fact is I'm using some picture from 1960 or 1950, it's still some things happening every day on any country, any different culture. And I mean, maybe it's a short film on a piece of square, on a piece of wood, and I'm quite interesting to every details. These parts could be just a painting, you know, this crop could be another painting. So if you crop the whole artwork, it's got a definition of the whole piece together. But it's the difference between the streets. It's when you put something on the streets, you just see the visual, the artwork, and sometimes the people forget that. Why do we put that piece here? And the impact of the image is not what we did create, it's what was surrounding it. So I almost like creating the landscape, and I almost wanted to create like a sculpture when you can turn around and see and touching, you know, like the piece becoming like three-dimensional. And it's very, very difficult for something so flat, you know, so much black and white, to give a sense of that. And that's the kind of challenges I like to do it on most of the pieces I did it. This one is it's the most sexual one, and it looks so masculine on it. But it's nothing really obviously sexual compared to the other one. I call this one the front bone. The most difficult things for human beings is to control your feeling about loving somebody. You know, you can't work hard, you can't not sleep for a day, you can decide to not eat, you can decide to run for a kilometer, and you hurt physically yourself. But when you lose somebody, when you have so much love for somebody, it's difficult to ignore it. It's right there on yourself. So it's almost like a best love of somebody you share it, and it will never fading. You know, it's there on you, and it can be depth of it. You know, and you have to be careful, and you can feel yourself to be in jail basically, because you have nothing to get back. You cannot get back something someone doesn't really like you, or just decide, you know what, it's the time now. We have to move on something else. But it makes you to grow. It makes you to discover how much love can hurt. This piece, it's my ex-girlfriend, one of my ex-girlfriend, and I did this piece with all the butterfly, and it's actually her having a dream, erotic dream on his own bed, and I'm most like see her to do it, but I'm above on the bed, and I decide to add all this butterfly flying like that, and behind you have a mesh window, so almost like the butterfly being stuck in the room, but they're ready to get away. And I met her, and I did that story, and I stayed with her for 9 years. And 9 years later, when she decided to move on, and she basically told me, you know what, I'm kind of like, I would love to live in my country. Can you come with me? And I decide it won't work for me. I create that piece when she moved out to my life. It was more like the butterfly, the beauty butterfly escaping, you know, the beautiful fly flying away from me. And I also cast the pillow. I cast the pillow if it's, you know, when you have a bed, a beautiful bed, and you have two people sleeping on the bed, you have the sheet of the bed curving a certain way, and it's like a print. You know how the people were sleeping together by the way the sheet was. So I decided to curve a head on the pillow. I think when I'm creating something with men, it's got to be power and jumping and kind of like extremely strong. And when I do something about women, it's got to be like very sexy, very sensual, very provocative. Like the ones I did on the street. You know, she could be like a slut, but she's the one who have all the whip to spank everybody. So she's the one who have the power.